pump the brakes. Yeah. This is the same time. This is the same century the United States is founded. The same century the colonies are really going to town in America. Goodness. The same century we're having all these tensions in Europe, all those things, right? So people are finally questioning whether or not it's cool to be eating dead bodies for medicinal purposes.
It turns out there's other things we could be doing.
Welcome.
Oh, here we go.
Welcome to the Low Grade Research Podcast.
So this day in history, October 12th, 1773, America's first insane asylum opens.
Oh, cool.
1773. So America had its first insane asylum before America was even America.
That's true. That was a few years before.
3 years early.
Just getting a head start. We're about to start a new country. We know we're going to get a lot of people in here soon.
Yeah, let's lock these people up.
1773. That's so crazy. Which back then I feel like it was a lot easier to be labeled insane.
Yeah.
You know, like they were putting people with mental disabilities and things like Down syndrome in places like that, right? So it was really easy to get and then just get experiments performed on you.
Yeah, really wild experiments, dude.
Such crazy stuff.
We had, my bachelor degree is in psychology, and so I took a class about like the history of psychology, and we talked a little bit about that. And the professor I had was like pretty adamant that we learn about the dark side of psychology.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if it was just to make sure that none of us were going to be like performing lobotomies on people or something. Yeah. I don't really understand why we learned about so much of it, but
well, I think it goes back to that old saying, but basically like those that don't learn about the past are doomed to repeat it type of thing.
Well, and I get
that.
So
just like learning from our mistakes.
But then you think about like if I hadn't ever learned about what a lobotomy was, I'm not going to go discover that and then start doing it to people now. You know what I mean? I'm not shoving an ice pick in someone's face. So I get that, but at the same time, it seemed a little heavy for what the class was supposed to be. Anyway.
You're like, this is too recent in history for people to be doing stuff like this.
I think about that so often.
No,
dude.
bro, this happened 20 years ago.
That what you just said, this is too recent in history for this to have happened, will come up later in this episode.
Yes, I'm really excited for this one.
Anyway, so yeah, I'll write down, I think I might do one about insane asylums at some point. Unless you want to take it.
Too.
So
no, go for it.
Okay, I'll take a note of that. All right, buddy. Okay, you ready to dive into this one?
Yes.
Because it's nuts, dude.
Yes.
Today's topic is the Mellified Man.
The Mellified Man?
Mellified Man.
I've never heard of it.
All right, so essentially, and this one I found, the article is fairly short in Wikipedia, so there's some links down at the bottom that are like see also.
Okay.
And so I'm doing another one that's a see also, which is Mummia. Mummia, Mummia.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that here in a minute. But essentially, Mellified Man boils down to this. It's a human mummy medical confection, right?
So what's the difference between that and just a mummy?
Well, because you don't generally eat mummies for medicinal purposes.
Confection.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It took a second for that to process. Confection, like a delicacy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But they use it as like all right, so I'll just get into it. So, according to the Wikipedia article, it's a legendary medicinal substance, right? That's made by mummifying a human cadaver in honey.
Oh, what?
Right? So it started in what was then called Arabia, which is 4th century BC, which is like the years 400 BC to 300 BC.
Okay.
But Arabia is now known, it's just the Arabian Peninsula. So it includes countries like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Yemen, Oman.
Oman.
I think
it's Oman.
United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain. Holy F, dude.
I'm sure we're saying all of these wrong because
100% we're saying them wrong. So please, if you're listening and you've ever been there to these places or you're from there, for one, forgive us, and then for two, reach out. Let us know what we can do to say these the right way. Anyway, so Bahrain, nothing like doubling down. Kuwait, and then a little bit of Iraq, Syria, and then Egypt. Right?
Okay.
So the idea is that an elderly man, 70, 80 years old, and it just was men from what I found in here. I don't know that there was a particular reason why. I mean, it's 400 BC, so like, that's a super hyper masculine oriented society.
I was going to say, even today, it's still a pretty men dominated area.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And and even back then, women were not viewed very well.
Right.
So why would you eat them?
Yeah. Why would you eat them? Great question. One that I hope to answer. So these dudes are 70 or 80, right? And then it's like they're kind of like volunteering, like donating their body to science in a way, but donating their body to medicine, right? So it's really simple. They're at the end of their life, and while they're alive, they start a mummification process on themselves.
What?
So they replace all the food that they're eating with honey.
Just honey.
They're eating only honey.
Interesting.
And I would assume they're drinking regular fluids, but it didn't differentiate, right? In the article, it just talked about food. But the idea is that it would take about a month. So there's a couple excerpts from, and I'm going to totally butcher the name of this, but there's like a Chinese encyclopedia of medicine.
Okay.
That was written over the course of like a few hundred years is what it looked like to me. But the first copy was released in like 1592 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But it details part of this and talks about like the history of this mellified man. So, and it calls it a different name, but it's the same thing.
Sure.
So it details it, and it talks about how these guys would start eating honey instead of food. And then it'd be about a month they're doing this. And eventually towards the...
got to get old so fast.
Man, wouldn't that get fast after like a
honey's,
day?
Like honey's delicious, but it's not something I would eat plain. Like it's something I put on other stuff, right?
Yeah, you're just going to drink a thick glass of honey.
Eating spoonfuls of honey all day. Ugh. Like at least give them some crackers to dip it in.
Yeah, I can't imagine a worse hell, frankly, because you're going to get like 20 days into it or whatever. And you're not done yet. And so it's like, I'm 20 days into this and I've eaten only honey.
Yeah, I've been doing this crazy honey diet. I've lost a ton of weight.
Yeah.
And my poops are just goo now, so I don't...
Okay, so speaking of goo poops, dude, so that's one of the indicators to know that
they're ready?
Ready is relative because the diet of only honey eventually kills them. So,
oh my gosh.
But so they go on for about a month and then...
It's like, ooh, he's ready.
They know when it's like they're, I guess, fully saturated.
Yeah.
When all of their excrement, their sweat, urine, everything, it turns into basically honey. It's like a honey-like substance.
That's so much honey you got to eat.
So they're only eating it, so everything starts to turn into honey, right?
Jeez.
So like I said, this goes over the course of roughly a month. We're talking about a manual that details this recipe, quote unquote, that was published, 600 years ago or whatever. So,
yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt, but or teaspoon of honey. Anyway, they go on about a month until everything coming out of them is honey as well. And then, like I said, this diet kills them. So they've got people kind of watching over or whatever. And as soon as the person dies, then they put them into a stone sarcophagus that's full of honey.
Wow.
And so they just soak them in there. They close it up, throw a couple layers of painter's tape on there, and then put a label on it of the, sealed, fresh until XY date.
They put the date on it like a can of tomatoes. Did it in any of your research, did it mention like if there was a specific type of honey, like, because different, I guess it would be relative to the region, but like bees pollinating certain plants creates different types of honey, right? Did it mention any of those specifics?
Not even a little bit.
I don't think they're worried about that.
Nah, dude, when you're talking, do you think
no, only clover honey.
Do you think the dude who's 15 days into a honey diet is going to care where it's coming from?
Yeah, can we shake it up just a little bit? Like maybe some bees that have pollinated orange trees.
Yeah, you get 5 days in and I'm pretty sure like, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I don't really want to finish this. Kill me now.
But culturally, they're going to kill me if I back out. So might as well just keep going.
So they put him in the sarcophagus. They wrap that up. They literally write the month and the year that it was.
Wow.
They sealed him up, and then they just let it sit.
Yeah.
So they let it sit for 100 years.
100 years?
100 years.
Oh my goodness.
They leave it in there for 100 years to macerate, and the definition of macerate is to become softened by soaking.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So leave this sucker in there 100 years, and essentially the body breaks down and dissolves into the honey after 100 years, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So now this is the crazy part. So they pull this person out, and essentially they're just bottling it and then selling it, and it's used as a topical and an internal medicine that is supposed to cure anything from broken bones to bruises and cuts and internal issues or whatever. Like, it gets a little bit vague on the stuff that it's supposed to cure, but it in everywhere it talks about that it's like super expensive.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find. It's like, because you're talking about some dude who gave his body up for medicine. They go through this crazy process. It's 100 years. Someone's got to bottle them up. They're selling them. It's super expensive. It's very sought after.
It's not like everyone that reaches this age demographic does this process.
No.
It's just the few that volunteer to become mellified or I don't know, maybe pressured. Like maybe was there certain types of people that they would try and get to do this, like healthy ones or that?
Just old.
I
mean, after reading
they
the
can't
article,
farm anymore. Let's honey them. As soon as you can't pick radishes anymore, we're going to put you in a vat of honey.
Oh,
we're going to start feeding you honey by the spoonful.
I love honey.
You won't by the end of 30 days.
Yeah. Talk to me tomorrow, bro. No, it didn't really it didn't differentiate between like who would do it or why. I mean,
it's not like these guys were also educated or had a high status in their community type of thing.
I mean, they very well could have. It didn't talk about that, but I can see that being something. It seemed, after reading the article, it seemed to me like it was, I mean, you're talking about 400 BC, so a long, long time ago, and like the focus on the medicinal properties of this was such that it would be, I wouldn't, it didn't say this in the article, so this is me just assuming a little bit, but like the focus that it puts on how much it costs, the preparation, the care it takes, the dedication, all that stuff. Like, I would imagine it's probably was seen as a pretty honorable thing to do.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're essentially giving up your body so that other people can be healed.
Yeah.
Right?
Man, all right. Keep
going. Yeah, so kind of we go back. There's an origin section in the article, so it talks a little bit about places that we start hearing this. So Herodotus is a Greek physician, 484 to 425 BC.
Oh, Herodotus is a man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So he's quoted as saying, or not quoted, but like he wrote that he'd seen or heard or knew of the Assyrians embalming their dead with honey.
Okay.
Right? We fast forward a little bit. Alexander the Great, they believe that his body was preserved in a sarcophagus full of honey. And whether or not they cracked him open and then, sipped him down like a fine vintage, I'm not sure. I would imagine that someone like Alexander the Great would go for a very expensive per bottle price.
Oh, yeah.
Probably about as much as a gallon of gas these days.
Big time.
And then, they kind of, there are some indications that the Egyptians also did it. So I talked a little bit about Arabia, right? Quote, which included at the time part of Egypt, kind of like the northeastern part of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have done some of this too.
Would people do their family members and just hey, we're going to reconnect with Grandpa. Oh, come over for a
It's like that scene in
spread some of Grandpa on your bread.
What's that movie with Zach Galifianakis and Robert Downey Jr.?
Oh my gosh.
Where he carries his dad's ashes in that coffee can and then they mix some of it up for coffee.
Due date.
Yes. It's just that.
If you haven't seen that movie, that's a fun movie. Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah, that's so nasty.
Come get your breakfast.
And then he drinks it and then like freaks out that he's drinking it and then he takes another drink to calm himself down. So the last couple things on this article, and then, like I said, it was short, so there was another linked article that goes into something equally grotesque. But there's kind of pop culture references, which I wasn't going to include, but it's like so. There was a band named Lemon Demon that had a song called Sweet Bod that talks about bodies.
Did you say Sweet Bod?
Sweet Bod. Like, how stupid.
Has a whole different meaning now.
I know, dude.
I can never compliment someone on their sweet bod.
Like, you're literally sweet as honey. But in the song, it talks about like eating honey and like being buried with honey and all kinds of stuff. There's a novel that's called Dervish House, which is like the story is about hunting for a mellified man. But then the one that I thought was funny was this a British children's show called Horrible Histories, and they just have they feature a show that they feature this topic and talk about it.
Episode about it. So, can you imagine? Because when kids watch a show, if they like get into something, they start reenacting that in their play.
Oh, for sure.
How many kids do you think started spreading honey on their brothers after
or
they watched that episode?
How many kids come home and like, "Hey, Mum, Dad, can I get a little bit of honey on my toes? Can I get a cup of honey?
Can I put honey on Simon?"
So that's
funny.
I mean, that pretty much wraps it up for that one. So like I said, there was a see also section at the bottom, and one of the other articles it references is medical cannibalism, which I have on my list for a later episode. It went into so much more stuff in that article, and so I wanted to really dedicate it with its own episode. So we'll get there.
Cool. I was gonna say I wanted to dive in more as to like why they thought this would be medicinal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does it like go back to like, hunters would eat the hearts of the animals they killed to gain their powers type of thing? Like if you take on personality traits, did they believe you take on personality traits or characteristics of someone if you eat the honey that they've been preserved in type of thing, right? Well,
and it does talk about, like I said, we'll dive into this one some other time, but the medical cannibalism, one of the early concepts it talks about is that people believed that, because the human body was self-healing, that it had healing capabilities.
Oh,
and so that you could consume dead or alive tissues, and then you would be able to inherit some of those healing characteristics for whatever they may be. But that makes sense why they would believe that. Doesn't make sense now. Yeah, well,
with the science we know. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to try this.
Medical science, it's leaps and bounds every couple of years even. I've got a 3-year-old son, and when my wife was pregnant, my mom gave us this pregnancy like preparedness book or whatever. It's from the 1970s. And in there, there's so many pictures of everything that's going on, and everybody looks like they're like Charles Manson followers. You know what I'm saying?
Which I feel like the 1970s was the worst time to be pregnant, because it was just kind of I think it was like at the tail end when like doctors were still smoking in their offices type of thing.
Yeah, dude. And even in the book, that's what I was gonna say, is that it said that it was okay to have a cigarette a day while you were pregnant.
Oh my gosh!
So we did.
And they did.
Just kidding.
You'll have to meet my aunts.
Of course we didn't do that, but
you guys did.
Yeah, us. Yeah, we didn't smoke before even.
Smoked
but we
once
read
in
that
her
and we're
life.
like, well, shoot, we'll give it a try.
The doc gave us the clear. It was then we realized it was from the 70s.
So it is nice to know that medical science has, I guess, fast forwarded. But at the time, and especially with the next article I want to talk about, it was honestly, it was a common theme for a long time, centuries, that you could consume, human remains and absorb medical, characteristics. And that is reflected in the other See Also article, which is Mummia, right?
Okay.
You want to take a break? You want to keep going for a minute? What do you think?
Let's take a short break, and then we'll come back to this.
Short break. So right after this, we're going to talk about Mummia.
All right, let's get back into it.
All right, so where was I?
So we left off kind of wrapping up Mellified Men, and we're going to dive into Mummia.
All right. Okay, so Mummia. So it's kind of like the same... Honestly, it's like almost the same theme. It's just a little bit more ridiculous.
Did you happen to see... Did they follow similar rituals with Mellified Man as they did with mummying, as far as like removing organs and things like that? Or was it just the whole person?
Nah, dude, from what I read, it was that dude drank honey until he was honey, and then they soaked him in honey and called it a day.
Man,
so you're eating up everything, you know?
And for 100 years, jeez. All right, let's go. Let's keep running.
I just can't even imagine. I mean, honey stays good for a long time, but when I think about this, and there was a moment where I just sat and really thought about what it was that they were doing, and it gets worse for what we're about to talk about, but it's just like you're drinking just like a human puree.
Ugh, yeah.
Or you're rubbing human puree, honey puree on like your broken knee or whatever, you know what I mean?
Bruises.
It's just like, it's just gross.
Hey, can you get Uncle Tom off the shelf? I've got a bruise on my shin.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Tom. I don't know. I did an old man voice.
He's dead. He's made of honey.
He's it's just wheezing from the beyond. All right. So, Mummia. So the theme of today's episode is eating dead people. So essentially, this kind of starts out as one thing and then morphs into another through kind of a series of events.
Oh, boy.
So mummia kind of refers to a couple different things. And early on, or depending on the region you're in, it refers to bitumen, which is like minerals and like, they say it, and it's such a wonky name. They call it, it sounds so terrible, but it's literally just the word out of Wikipedia, and it's an actual thing. Piss asphalt.
What?
But it's just like a certain type of like mineral. You know what I mean? It's just like rocks and minerals. I don't know. It wasn't super clear, and I probably should have gone a little bit more detailed in what that even means. But essentially, bitumen is like some kind of mineral pitch. It's some kind of like asphalt pitch kind of mineral that you can take for medicinal purposes. And they have like, and we'll get into it, but they have like all these regions where they would get it from.
Okay.
And so it's like, it's powdered, and then you can use it topically or internally for various things, right?
Interesting.
Medicinally.
Yeah.
But then mummia can also refer to, and later on it refers to this more strongly, which is powdered human mummies or parts of mummies.
Whoa.
Okay. So if you spend any amount of time looking into Egypt and mummies and that kind of a thing, it's pretty clear that there's not very many mummies, but there used to be tons of mummies, right? Because the Egyptians really went ham on mummifying people.
Sure.
But this is one of the direct reasons why there are not as many for, certain regions or whatever, because as we'll talk about, there begins such a lucrative trade of mummies that like demand outweighs supply, and then like they're running out of mummies that they can use for medicinal purposes. Right? People are eating these or using them as medicine.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, so let's pump the brakes a little bit. We'll rewind, and then we just
so much there.
Start from the beginning. You got anything you want to get off your chest before we dive into this?
I don't. There's just you're just talking about so many things, and I know the details are coming, but you just went with medicinal mummies and selling out dried parts, and I was like, wait, what? It's like when you go to your grandma's house and she's just got like old medicines on the shelf because she doesn't throw anything away. You're like, what really was up there?
Stuff that's been there that's illegal in the United States now. That's been there from the 40s.
Grandma's dead. We'll never know what was up there.
Well, Mitch has got a grandma that was like that, and he's talking from personal experience.
She was a legit hoarder. She just didn't throw things away. So I remember when like medicine came in like old green glass bottles and stuff. Like she had stuff on there that most people would think, oh, what a cool antique. But she's like, oh no, we gave that to a grandchild last week, type of thing. Like, oh, Grandma, you're gonna kill all of us.
That child's too screamy. Here's a little bit of opium to put under his tongue.
Oh,
yeah.
that was my grandma. She'd peel the mold off of her bread and eat it.
That's gross, man.
Like, no, it's still good. Which I get if there's like a spot. You can like rip the corner off, but like more than would be normal. And some people,
not even like,
and some people are still uncomfortable with like ripping off the one little spot of like mold. But like there was plenty of mold on the bread, and she's just like, "Oh, just pick it off." And I'm like, "No, I'm gonna go look in the trash for food, Grandma."
So that grosses me out anyway, because I took a cell biology class in college, and we talked about mold. Mm-hmm. But like at the point where you can see visible mold in something, the fungi has already permeated the entire thing.
Oh my gosh.
So the part you can see that's physical mold, like that you can see with your eyes, is just the reproductive cycle of mold.
Sure.
Fungi becomes visible when it's reproducing. That's when it pops out of the ground, it's reproducing everything. Same with Mitch. So, but yeah, so like it gross. I used to do the same thing, just like cut the part that has the mold off or whatever. But like the whole thing is mold if you can see mold.
Then.
Yeah.
Oh, dang it. I've got some bread to throw away.
Yeah. Well, when the whole heel of the bread is mold, you can't eat the front slice, dude.
When that slice walks out of the bag.
Yeah, you're going to get sick, dude. When you see a poof, when you open that bag, it's not good to eat.
Take me back to lunches at my grandma's house.
A little opium on the side, dude. Crush it up and sprinkle that onto the mold. It'll kill it.
Oh, man.
Okay, so mumia. Let's get into it. So what is it? So it originates from Persia and Arabia. So we talked about Arabia earlier on, which is the Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah, so we're kind of in the same region still.
Mm-hmm. And Persia is modern day Iran.
Okay.
Generally speaking.
Sure.
You know, obviously the borders have changed a little bit here and there or whatever, but it's essentially the same place.
Yeah.
So mumia, which is this either the bitumen, which is kind of the more mineral-based cure-all or whatever, and also the powdered mummies. It's used as a cure-all and also an aphrodisiac.
Nice.
Sold in markets by merchants. It's super expensive. And it kind of starts picking up steam in the 12th century, which is 1100 to 1200, right? So around this time, it's really hot. It's a really expensive thing to get, and supplies start to run low. So, I'm trying to think about how I want to explain this. I think I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because it talks about the progression of how we move from minerals to mummies, and it's so freaking stupid.
Oh my gosh.
So the article talks about how it really started out as these minerals and then transferred into powdered mummies from a 3-step process, and it lays it out really nice. But essentially it's misinterpretations, mistranslations, and then just straight up decisions that one is better than the other at some point, right?
Like, so this was all a mistake?
Kind of, yeah, it starts as a mistake.
They're like they just misread something in the recipe, and they're like, "Oh, we're supposed to be bottling humans."
It's essentially the hubris of physicians in early human history.
Oh my goodness.
That are just deciding that it's one thing and then they run with it. So it breaks it up. So step one is mainly mistranslations. So we have these physicians that are reading old Latin text or whatever, or they're reading translations of findings from earlier physicians talking about mineral bitumen.
Okay.
And I have a few quotes here, which I think are pretty fascinating. So one physician, which is it's credited to an Arab physician. And then I did autocorrect, so I don't even have his real name anymore. Let's see. All right, the Arab physician Scarapion the Younger. Quote, "Mumia. This is the mumia of the sepulchres with aloes and myrrh mixed with the liquid of the human body." Right?
Okay.
So we get along down the line, and then another physician is quoted saying, and this is Gerard of Cremona, And he says, the substance found, quote, the substance found in the land where bodies are buried with aloes, by which the liquid of the dead, mixed with the aloes, is transformed and is as similar to marine pitch. Right?
Okay, break that down.
So essentially, the first dude's saying mummia is from sepulchres, and it's aloes and myrrh mixed, and then, with of the human body. And I take it to mean that you're taking these minerals or whatever, and I don't know if he's directly saying mixed with a human body of the time or a corpse or whatever, but I think it's taken to mean like you're mixing it with the living body as the cure, right?
Oh, okay.
Anyway, but this is mistranslated, and I could be wrong, and this is low-grade research, so, if I'm wrong, then
there's going to be some mistakes.
We're rewriting history. So this next dude mistranslates it and then says it's this mummia is the substance that we find it in the land where bodies are buried, and the bodies are buried with aloes and the liquid of the dead, and we mix those things and transform it, and it's similar to the marine pitch, which is the bitumen.
Yeah.
So this next dude's saying we get the stuff from the bodies, and that is the thing that's similar to what we've been using medicinally now.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I don't even want to know what liquid of the dead is.
Oh, we're going to talk about it, dude.
Oh, no.
So the next dude mistranslates further, right? So this is Matthias Palatrius. And he says, quote, mummia is a spice found in the sepulchres of the dead. That is best, which is black, ill-smelling, shiny, and massive.
Oh.
End quote.
Oh, the nastier the better.
So this dude's just running with it, right? So that's step one. So we're talking about mistranslations.
Okay.
So these doctors that are real full on their own ego and their own smarts are mistranslating things, just confidently putting it out into the world that what once started as just a mineral cure is now just straight up powdered dead people, right?
Oh my gosh. So they basically said, hey, we're finding this stuff underneath where we've buried dead people that's similar to these other minerals that we think are good for you. So it looks close enough.
I mean, you're close.
Why don't we start selling this?
Yeah, they're saying that it's the pieces, it's the bodies themselves, or elements of the bodies that are as good as the thing that we used before.
Oh, that's so wild.
So then we get into step 2, which Wikipedia breaks down as basically visual confusion. So physicians start confusing. So the bitumen is like black color, right? So they start confusing the black colored bitumen. Gosh, I feel like it's wrong to even say that word every time. I feel, bitumen.
Bitumen?
Bitumen. It's probably bitumen.
Vitamin?
I'm saying that
it's like vitamin.
I'm turning that into something it's not. Bitumen. Anyway, whatever it is. So it's black in color. But they're confusing it with an embalming preservative that's also black, and it's with no, I said that wrong. So physicians start confusing the black-colored bitumen that is used as an embalming preservative with black exudation.
Exudation?
I wondered that myself. And exudation is essentially secretions from a corpse.
Oh gosh!
Or not a corpse, but a human body. So like it can be anything from like
sweat.
Or like the example that he used in the definition was like a scab.
Oh, okay.
So like blood and whatever else is coming out of a scab, right?
Oh my goodness.
It also said that it could be like if you were to carve up like a pine tree or whatever, like the sap coming out is exudation, right?
Okay, sure.
But essentially when we're talking about mummies, we're talking about stuff that's oozing out of pores and wounds and stuff from a corpse.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So these physicians are confusing this mineral that they were using with stuff that's oozing out of the corpse.
Oh my goodness.
And it's hard to decide, I guess, even though you can clearly see where it's
They ran
coming.
through all the tests, the smell test, the taste test. Couldn't tell a difference.
The visual look.
The visual look.
I mean,
if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck.
It's good for your health.
Then eat it.
Eat it. Eat that duck.
Oh man,
we can kind of see this though, like because if the body's in a sarcophagus, stuff that has exudated from the body,
right?
It's not going to be like a scab on the mummy's knee that they're just scraping off, like, oh, that looks like it's a mineral.
Gross.
It's probably going to be along the bottom of the sarcophagus or whatever, and like it
Sure.
probably is confusing to try and distinguish that between.
I mean, I guess.
Because they're saying that this bitumen was like also used as kind of an embalming
Okay.
substance too, right? So like it would be in there as well. So
That makes a little more sense.
it'd just be hard to distinguish if it's the same color and same consistency.
Man.
So they do that, and then they realize at one point that they're mixing them up, but then
We've made a terrible mistake.
nah, dude, they realize they're mixing them up, and then they just decide that the mummy is a better medicine
Oh, man.
than the minerals.
Oh, man.
So we mistranslate it. They're like, dang it. I'm not
too
going to
late.
tell anybody though,
Too
because
late. We got to run with it.
yeah, because I'm the first doctor that doesn't have a medical degree in world history, and I don't want anybody to think that I didn't know what I was talking about.
I don't want to get found out.
So, and they're going to lose their tenure and all that. You get it canceled, all that stuff. So,
They're publishers.
so they confuse it, they mistranslate it, and then they finally figure out that they're just visually confusing things, and then they move on to just like straight up, no, it was on purpose the whole time. This stuff is just better, right?
Oh,
So
my
that's step
gosh.
3. So
like-
I've labeled. Oh, go ahead.
So that's the most basic scientific method ever. It's like, well, it looks the same. Good enough.
100%.
Like no other tests were done.
No, why not,
Oh
dude?
my goodness.
I mean, they didn't have
These
testing back then.
Sure, but these people invented so many things. Like, yeah, this was a long time ago. Like, these people were smart.
Okay, but it was also like the time where you just, if someone had a cold, you would just slice their arm open and watch them bleed out until they got better. You know what I mean?
I guess not that smart. I'm giving them too much credit.
They were advanced in other ways. We'll just say that. So we get to step 3, which I labeled leaning in. So, so physicians decide miraculously that mummies are actually a better medicine.
Oh.
Especially if it's derived from corpses, especially, quote, the flesh of a man who perishes a violent death and is kept for some time in the air. So, as a
Oh,
side
my
note,
goodness.
that quote comes from, I suppose, kind of a bastardization of the idea of a mummy now, right?
Okay, sure.
So, like, we get to a point, we start out with these minerals, we confuse them with mummies, we really start leaning in heavy on mummies, and then at some point, these doctors and physicians are saying, well, we can get the same thing. It doesn't have to be a mummy that was buried however long ago. We get
Yeah.
the same thing from a modern day corpse.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
And then we don't have to wait.
So that quote comes from a German doctor, Oswald Kroll, who, this is a warning for those who might be listening. Skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear about it. But he goes on to give a detailed recipe for how to make mumia.
Oh, my goodness.
Right? So he's talked about this red-haired young man who had been hanged, bludgeoned. They exposed the body to the air. They dismember him, put him into tiny pieces. They sprinkle powder over him. And I don't know, it doesn't say what the powder is, so who knows. Then they soak the pieces in red wine. They dry them. And then that's this homemade mumia, right?
And then did they just bottle that? Or did they...
Well, then it would be like powdered and then used topically or internally for things,
so
right?
then they would kind of like dry it out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness.
But this dude's out there just like... His belief turned into finally that the medicine was even more potent if it came from someone who died a violent death.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Yeah, with all the cuts and lacerations and the
Everything, yeah, as violent as it gets,
blood
dude.
and scabs and everything. My goodness.
So that's how we're rocking this. So, all right, so now we can back up just a tiny bit. So we talked about kind of the overall thing of how this happened. So like it's used by medieval Persian physicians. It starts out as just a salve for cuts. We're talking about bitumen here specifically, salve for cuts, bruises, fractures, and then also internally for like ulcers and tuberculosis, right? We're
Okay.
using minerals for this.
Man, everything.
We start moving on to mummies, and it's all used for the same thing. But at a certain point, we're talking about like what's best. And so there's Persian physicians that are saying the best results are achieved with this. It's black piss asphalt. And I don't know how to say that any other way. It's literally how it's written, but it sounds terrible. From this certain mountain range in Persia, right? And then there's this Greek physician who is Pedants Dioscorides. Who even knows? But he was around 50 to 70 AD. he said that Dead Sea bitumen was as medicinally equal or superior than this stuff, the really expensive stuff coming out of Persia, right?
Oh, man, sure.
So we kind of move forward a little bit in history, and during the Crusades, the European soldiers are using mumia, they're putting it on their fractures, they're putting it on cuts and stuff, and they're like, man, this stuff is bomb. And so because of that popularity, demand skyrockets, right? So demand is huge, supply goes down, and so we kind of move, this is kind of happening at the same time. We're discovering that we're confusing bits of mummy with bits of mineral, and so the search turns from minerals that are found kind of naturally sourced to essentially just raiding tombs in Egypt.
Oh my goodness.
To try and find,
try and harvest.
Try and get some of that sweet, sweet medicine.
Oh my goodness.
To harvest. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. We only harvest at night, son. Be very quiet. Mother doesn't know.
So we get to a point now that it's like, that the mummies or the stuff that's coming from a body is seen as more pure, right?
Yeah.
And that corpses that like this dude's just making his own medicine from are seen as kind of less pure. And, we get to like the Renaissance and there's scholars and stuff that are like, what the are we doing?
Right.
We're eating dead people here, folks. But then even there's still a little bit of confusion, like, but the mummies are kind of okay still. But if we're like scooping up corpses of criminals and stuff and doing that, which they did, they're like, that's probably not cool, right?
Oh man.
And even during that time in the Renaissance, they find like apothecaries in France that would steal bodies of executed criminals, dry them in an oven, chop them up, and then sell the flesh as, just out of their apothecary shop or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's all happening at the same time.
Oh.
So we kind of fast forward and we're getting closer and closer to the modern day, which is alarming, dude. And the fact of the podcast is on its way and it's going to blow your mind. So we get into like 17th century, which is like 1600s, 1700s.
Yeah.
And at the time, mumia is called, quote, one of the most useful medicines given by physicians for falls, bruises, and other things too, right?
Oh my goodness.
So they're still fully on board in the 17th century with bitumen.
So has this moved outside of Arabia?
Oh yeah, it's like big time in Europe.
Oh man.
Big time, right? Yeah. And it's kind of spread to other places as well.
Are they taking it from, or is it still being sent from these Arabian cultures to Europe, or is Europe now like, oh, we've got our own dead bodies that we can harvest from?
Well, it's kind of both, right? Because we talk a little bit about like there starts to be such a demand for it that there's like these super lucrative trade routes between Europe and Egypt.
Sure.
For their mummies. And so they're picking up these mummies left and right to try and turn them into, powdered medicine or whatever. And eventually Egypt bans the trade of mummies in like the 16th century. Yeah, and so people are still in full swing through the 17th century. So we kind of moved to, people going kind of clandestine and stealing the mummies and then moving more toward like, let's just make them out of, criminals.
Oh my gosh.
So
I just feel like that's a lower quality product.
I mean, yeah, there's no other way to say it. If you're gonna eat a powdered body, you may as well not be a criminal. That's the stance this podcast is gonna take.
I feel like better product would come from people that live better lives. Is all I'm saying.
You know what? Better products generally come from really good places. One of the places we get better products from, Springville Meats.
If you haven't, check out their website. It's actually pretty good. It shows a great list of the things they offer, the different meats and different cuts of those meats that they can give. And it's just great beef.
Yeah, and it's a hometown, it's a family-owned business. And you're going to get things like jerky. You're going to get like pulled pork pre-made in a bag, so you can just warm that up and give it out to your family on a family occasion or whatever it may be. Right? They deliver. It's great.
So check them out. I know they're on social media. Give them a follow. It's worth it for sure.
It is. And again, that's Springville Meat Co. So be sure to check it out. So anyway, talking about eating things. the trade for mummies goes crazy. Egypt bans the trade on mummies. We start turning to corpses. Life's getting crazy. Everyone's having a good time. We hit the 18th century. And then for some reason, finally in the 18th century, which is the year 1700 to the year 1800, people are like, whoa, 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 pump the brakes. Right? Like, pump the brakes. This is the same time, this is the same century the United States is founded, the same century the colonies are really going to town in America, the same century we're having all these tensions in Europe, all those things, right? So people are finally questioning whether or not it's cool to be eating dead bodies for medicinal purposes.
Maybe turns out there's other things we could be doing.
Other things we can be doing.
For our health.
100%.
Oh, man.
So people start turning against it. It dies in popularity, whatever. So we would hope...
It's just not the cool thing to do anymore.
It's not the cool thing to do anymore.
No, I've been trying this thing called vegetables. It seems to be working.
It seems to be good. It's cured my ulcers. So if you were to take a wild shot in the dark on the last year that something like this was sold, what would you say? We're talking about the 18th century. It dies out in popularity, right? So what are you thinking?
This was sold last year.
No, not quite that recent. That would be extremely shocking. And maybe it is in some part of the world. I don't know. But
I mean, it's got to be some. So you're saying like last year this was sold, like marketed. Because like something like this, I can totally see that there's still a culture somewhere out there or a little niche where someone's like, yeah, if we can get our hands on it, we'll use it type of thing. You know what I mean?
You would think, right?
So you're saying like when was the last year this was like marketed and someone had their going out of business sale?
Yep.
Oh,
What's your guess? And where in the world do you think that happened?
Ooh. I'm gonna say I don't think it was in the United States.
Okay.
Oh man, I'm gonna go Europe, World War I era, like 1920s.
Okay. So I'll tell you this.
Let's go Germany. We'll be specific. We'll go Germany.
Give me a specific year.
1922.
All right, I'll tell you what, dude. You're 2 years too soon.
Oh, no way.
And you're an ocean away from the place it was sold.
Oh, that's a little far. Are you talking America?
America, dude.
Oh my goodness.
The year 1924.
What?
Sold by a pharmaceutical company in America named Merck & Co., which still exists, by the way. And they still sell pharmaceuticals. They sell vaccines, biological therapies, animal health products, all that stuff. So 1924 is the last time that they sold this.
Wow. So we were doing it over here even.
Yeah.
Where we're like, oh man, that's so wild.
Dude, it's a potent, if a medicine works, baby. You know what I'm saying?
I guess. At what point is it, I mean, that's got to just be a placebo thing, right?
Gosh, I don't know. I can't imagine. I mean, we have all kinds of, I was going to say wonky health products. And generally speaking, I sincerely believe that if you believe something works for you, it's your prerogative.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And if that's like, you know, obviously I've got a background in psychology. That's something I want to continue doing. And like, if you feel like getting sunshine is the thing that you need to feel healthy during the day, by all power, you know, more power to you.
Yeah.
If you feel like you need to have frankincense oil burning in your house at all hours of the day, go for it. If you're really into SSRIs, you know, that's an avenue too, whatever. But I draw the line at bodies, dude.
I have my standards and I'm not going to dip below them.
But I mean, we see like all kinds of like, and there are like wonky health products out there or whatever. And like,
sure, even still today.
Yes. And so, you know.
Well, this is almost like, this makes me think even a little bit, because this is something that happens today where women will take, after they give birth, they'll take their placenta home. And,
sure, yeah.
And dry it out and put it in little pill capsules. Or like I've even heard of some boiling it and making it into a soup to give to their family. Like this is totally along those same, it's in the same neighborhood as this for sure.
For sure in the same neighborhood. Yeah. East side of Chicago, for sure, dude. So I don't know why I said that. If you're in the east side of Chicago, I'm sorry. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like, and that's a pretty good example. I know some people are going to be offended by that, but honestly, it's gross. right?
It's a little weird.
And I've seen a placenta in real life, and it's not something I'm ready to go grind up and start taking every
Not
day.
necessarily too. And I'll have to look more into it, but I had a conversation with someone recently that said, they basically said the science behind that doesn't check out because of how the placenta actually works and where it delivers nutrients and once the baby's actually taken out.
Sure.
Anyway.
That it's not as vitamin rich in as a productive way as people think it is.
Yeah, yeah. And so then you're just, basically, eating the lining of a uterus. So, maybe it tastes good. I haven't tried it, so I can't knock it. You know what I mean?
We're getting into weird territory here, buddy.
We are. Let's keep going.
You got a Jeffrey Dahmer look in your eye, and I'm not liking it. It's just me and you in this room, dude.
I was going to invite you and your wife over for some soup next week.
Nah, dude. I'm going to kill you. Dahmer has turned into the Dahmy, baby.
Maybe Jeffrey wouldn't have done the things he did if he'd have known that this was an option. Listen, if there's any serial killers out there that are looking to get out of the game and just find some other means, there's bitumen. Get your vitamins through bitumen. I'm going to let you continue.
You're off the rails, my dude. Thankfully, that's the end of the article.
Just saying, if he could take it in pill form, maybe he wouldn't have done the terrible things he did.
My Lord. I don't think that's true at all.
I don't know if this is going to make it. We might final cut.
We might cut this whole section out, dude. You don't want to be low-key advocating for serial killers in the end of our podcast?
I'm also reaching out to them.
Yeah, we don't
saying,
need that.
Hey, there's help for you.
There's not. Not here anyway. Okay.
All right.
Okie
Anyway,
dokie.
so the practice has since stopped. That's good to hear.
Well, and I actually don't know if it has since stopped. I
can totally still see this being a thing in Europe or.
For sure, dude. Like, who's to say that somewhere in the world stuff like this isn't still being sold?
Yeah, right.
And even, I wouldn't be surprised if, even some of the original stuff, like people are still selling mumia from actual mummies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised about that at all.
Trying to move some good product, authentic product.
Yep. So that's it, man. That's Mellified Man and Mumia.
That is crazy.
So
that's some pretty wild stuff.
The moral of this podcast is be careful what you're getting into on the internet.
Yeah, make sure you read the whole label on anything you buy.
Yep. Anything that says could contain trace amounts of human remains or whatever. That whole thing's human remains, dude. That's like the mold analogy. If there's a tiny bit of human remains in something you've got going on, the whole thing is.
So it's all been contaminated.
Yeah, there's no reason to continue on with that. So,
wow. Man, this was a really interesting topic.
Yeah, man.
Really interesting. Man, so many questions that I know we just don't have the answers to.
Well, maybe, we can do maybe a couple follow-up episodes. We're going to have one for medical cannibalism, which is going to touch on a lot of the same stuff we talked about today. I think for the sake of me not wanting to talk about stuff like this for a while, that might not be for a hot minute, but because it's pretty gross.
We need some time to recover.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something, I don't know, low-key like schizophrenia next time.
And then about the life of Walt Disney next time.
Yep.
Wild.
So thank you for everybody who listened. Remember, you can always find our new releases every week.
Find us on social media at the Low Grade Research Pod.
And we have an email you can reach out to as well, and but I don't know what it is. So listen to the next episode to find out.
It'll be up.
Feel free to check out Springville Meat Co. They aren't a sponsor of ours, but we genuinely do like their products. So go ahead and reach out to them. Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in.